I'm Ke, a fourth-year CSC PhD candidate at UCSD. Today, I'm super excited to introduce our work, StealthyIMU, extracting permission-protected private information from smartphone voice assistant using zero-permission sensors. This is a joint work with my colleague Chunyu Xia, Songlin Xu, and my professor Xinyu Zhao. So first, we will introduce the basic concept for the speech eavesdropping. This is considered as a very significant privacy threat for long term. Like for the smartphone, typically, people can use the microphone to eavesdrop on the speech from the victim or from the smartphone itself. So that's why the microphone sensor is always considered as a privacy-sensitive sensor for the smartphone OS and will be protected by the permission. Recent research has found that motion sensor also have some capabilities trying to capture the speech generated by the victim or the loudspeaker. The attacker can try to capture these motion sensor signals and trying to extract the speech content from that. However, one of the recent research showed that only the loudspeaker render the speech signal traveling through a solid surface can create noticeable impact on motion sensors, which means that they can try to monitor some speech from the loudspeaker on the smartphone, but they cannot try to eavesdrop on the victim's speech because they are propagated through the air. Also, there are many other limitations for this kind of privacy threat. Compared to the traditional microphone, motion sensors, they always have low sampling rate, low signal-to-noise ratio, and also have additional interference like motion artifacts. So therefore, they can only achieve very low-risk tasks. For example, they try to classify a small set of digitals and hot words. They try to partially recover the speech signals. And in a very ideal scenario, for example, the number of users will be limited, and the training and testing will be in the same group of users. So in this work, we are trying to consider the problem where this threat model poses a real privacy threat to the victim. That's why we introduced the threat model StealthyIMU, which is trying to extracting the permission-protected private information from smartphone voice user interface response. The basic attack surface for StealthyIMU is that we all know all the voice assistants, they need to grant so many reading permissions from the smartphone OS, like your calendar, alarm, voicemail, and even your locations, phone numbers, search histories, because they need to use this information to reply to the user for a specific voice command. And also, we found that from their response, they will try to leak many permission-protected private information. So if we can monitor the voice command reply from the smartphone using the motion sensor, that means the attacker can get all of these reading permissions from the voice assistant. So let's take a more detailed example for this kind of threat model. Suppose the victim is trying to issue a voice command like set a reminder to check my bank account. Then your voice assistant like Apple Siri or Google Assistant will reply to that and say that, got it, check my bank account. And if the motion sensor can capture this kind of reply, then the attacker can try to get the type of the command and also the intent of your command, like check your bank account. Another example is related to our navigation app, like the Google Maps and the Apple Maps. For example, when you do the navigation, they will always navigate you and say something like, in 600 feet, use the right lane to turn right onto Hollywood Boulevard. That means if the motion sensor can capture this kind of speech, the attacker itself can try to extract you are doing the navigation and your location is Hollywood Boulevard. And finally, we can even recover your GPS trace. So if you consider this kind of problem, it's pretty close to a traditional spoken language understanding problem that is used for the voice user interface. Like, for example, the user will issue a voice command like turn on the light, and the device will analyze this kind of intent, and finally, the actuator will act for that. We are trying to do a reverse version for this kind of SLU systems. So compared to the SLU for the voice user interface and the StealthyIMU, the voice user interface is trying to extract the request from the speech, and they use the microphone to capture the signals, which have high sampling rate and high speech quality. But in our case, we're trying to use the motion sensor to capture the privacy information from the motion sensor signals. And the motion sensor signals, as we know, like they only have like low sampling rate, low speech quality. But we do find the two opportunities that make it possible. One is that all of the replies are machine rendered sound, which means they have very limited of voice profiles. For example, Google Assistants, they only have 10 different profiles. And also for the voice user interface response, they have very deterministic format compared to the natural language. So that makes us have the possibilities trying to extract the private information from the voice user interface response. So what we're trying to do is like to achieve a affordable attack, and then we also want to achieve a high attacking sampling rate. And finally, we want to explicitly extract the permission protected private information. So we target on most of the reading permissions like video calendar, contacts, SMS, search history, or even your GPS trace. The first challenge is how to achieve an affordable attack, which means like neither the smartphone OS or user can notice this attack. This means that what we do is like trying to design like attacking pipeline which have a very low overhead. We like make sure like we can only need like low on-device computational cores which have less than like trying to detect this like motion sensor signals induced by the voice command reply. And also, we design a lightweight voice identification model trying to identify these motion sensor signals. And we also make sure like we only need a very limited on-device storage cores because we're only trying to save the potential motion sensor signals which consume 16 kilobytes for each response. And finally, we have very low communication requirement because we can do all the attack vector on device with very low CPU usage. And finally, we can upload just the natural language permission information to the attacker, which consumes less than 50 bytes for each response. So the second challenge what we have is like how to inferring the privacy like information from a single voice user interface response. We trying to design a specific spoken language understanding model that's trying to help us solve this problem. Traditional like SLU system, they will have two stages. The first is the ASR, that is automatic speech recognition, trying to convert the signal to the natural language. And then they will use the natural language understanding system trying to extract the intent. But we find that because we use the motion sensor signal, they only have low sampling rate, low speech quality. So at the first stage, the ASR will achieve very low accuracy. And that's why we designed the end-to-end SLU system directly trying to extract the private information from the motion sensor signals. There are two opportunities that for us that can do it. For example, like we can, because the voice user interface response are more deterministic, and we can trying to only need to extract the private information while ignore other information. So before we try to design this model, we collect a very large scale data set which contain 45,000 different voice user commands and their replies from 23 different types that is frequently used by the Google Assistant. And we analyze all the formats and the structure of these replies and manually label their private information. It takes us about 1,000 hours to do it. We open source all of the code and the data set in our GitHub repo. And then we design a specific SLU model, DL model, trying to extract the private intent from the motion sensor signals. This is a sequence-to-sequence model with the encoder-decoder design, and the output will be a subword level token, and we use the teacher forcing strategy trying to improve the performance. But we still find that the attacking success rate is not that high, so we design more techniques from the neural network design to improve it. One of our solutions is that we also capture the speech signals, and we all know like the speech-based SLU will achieve very high performance. So we use the knowledge from the speech model trying to help it to train the motion sensor signal-based model. And we evaluate this voice user interface response private entity recognition rate from 3 different metrics: type error rate, single entity error rate, and also the sentence error rate, which means like all the entities in a single voice user interface response are recognized correctly. we found that by using the SLU model, we will achieve low error rate, which means higher success rate, attacking success rate. And then if we combine the knowledge destination from the speech, it will achieve a better success rate. The third challenge, what we're trying to do is that we want to extract the explicit permission-protected privacy information. And what we're trying to do is we can combine the private intent from a single or multiple voice user response. We categorize into 3 different categories. The first one is the one-time steering. That means we take only a single voice user response as the input to extract the private information. We can achieve 85% success rate for the attack, and we find that some voice command replies like the reminders, media alarm, and the hands-free calling navigation app, they have very sophisticated replies, which means we will achieve relatively low success rate, but it's still higher than 70%. The second one we're trying to do is a short-term context inference. One of the idea is we want to infer the private information using multiple consecutive VUI response. One of the typical example is that we can do it for the navigation app to recover your GPS trace. So we found that for each crossroad when you are doing the navigation, there are multiple voice command issued. And then we can try to find the crossroad and finally recover the GPS trace. We achieve an average 133 meter error for the GPS trace recovery. And we find that because we are trying to extract the private information for each voice replies, that means we will not have an accumulation error. Even though we find some crossroad is wrong, it will finally navigate us to the right location. The third one is a long-term monitoring. That means we repeat the same type of voice command in a few days. You will always check your weather, air quality, or reminder, or navigate you to your home. So we assume each voice user response is a single individual event, and we take the extract a city name from the daily weather voice user interface response as an example. We find that we can identify city name from the 70% success rate for one inquiry to about 98%. And another example, what we do is trying to extract the home address from your daily navigation back to home. We achieve 11 meters home address estimation error by combining 10 attempts. So make a conclusion, we're trying to use the zero permission motion sensor to extract the permission-protected private information from VUI response. And we do achieve an affordable attack vector and trying to formulate it as a SLU problem, use the cross-module knowledge distillation strategy to extract the private entities. And we also designed the short-term, long-term attack to steal explicit permissions like your calendar, search history, GPS trace, or even your home address. And finally, in our paper, we also designed the defense mechanism by using the speech predistortion, that is trying to distort the low-frequency part for voice replies, but will not scarify the quality for the speech. So we will also mention that this StealthyIMU attack can also be general to other side channels like radio frequency signals, light, to steal the private information from other VUI devices like voice assistant. That's all. Thank you.
How robust is your attack to environmental noises such as sound noise, vibration noise, all that sort of stuff? Remember these zero permission IMU sensor readings are used to detect the which route, tribe or took, all that sort of stuff. I was reported before.
Yeah, thank you for your question. That's also something we are considering in the paper, but due to the time, didn't present it. We consider many motion artifacts like when you walk, when you drive, we are trying to filter out some low frequency motion artifact signals, but most of the signal from the speech will be above 100 hertz, and we can capture about 215 hertz for the speech. So we can use that spectrogram to do the motion we captured it.
But I can fool that very easily using sound masking. I can generate, the high enough sort of sound intentionally. but the attacker may not know, but the intended receiver may know, so it can sort of decrypt.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very wise defense mechanism. That's also proposed in our paper, trying to defend this attack. It's really a nice idea. Thank you.
Okay, so, hi, Andrew Searles from UCal Irvine. I was wondering if you would find these sensors in a car. Is that like a normal thing that you would find, or is this a kind of a imagined scenario?
Yes, we feel like this structure model can be any kind of sensor side channels on your car, if they can trying to monitor your vibration. So if we can monitor your vibration, we can try to extract your GPS trace from the navigation system like CarPlay. So that's a very good idea. I think this is really general.
Are there other questions? Got some time? Sure.
I have a very quick question. So, do you have the estimated cost of your prototype?
Sorry?
Do you have an estimated cost of the prototype of the attacking devices?
Yes. We're trying to estimate it. We found that they have different noise for different cylinder, like 2 cylinders or 4. And we also find that they will have different RPM for different speed, and it will also introduce different noise. But most of the noise will be lower than 100 hertz. So we can still use the frequency from 100 to 250 to extract the speech or extract the permissions.
Okay, I mean for the price of the prototype, how much would be cost to implement such an attack?
I see. So the price, I see. So in our paper, what we do is for a smartphone. But I think if we want to deploy this attack in a car, we only need to put maybe a motion sensor on the car close to the loudspeaker, on the smart CarPlay or something close to the CarPlay. So it's very cheap to attack if you want to deploy it on a car. But in this paper, what we do is trying to deploy this attack in a smartphone by using the zero permission sensors.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
More questions? Yeah. Actually, I also have a question. So I noticed using this MU in smartphone to infer information has been a very long history, right? So maybe even 10 years ago, we were saying that use MU, can you see to infer the pin code, the patterns, all the different things. So it's been such a long time, right? So I think an easy way is to regulate the granularity or some access of this kind of the permissions, right? I don't know why is it still not there. And of course, your work just put even more pressure or even more emphasis on this information. But then I guess I want to know your opinion about why still no regulation, no access control about this kind of information.
That's a really nice question. We feel we don't need that granularity for the motion sensor, but indeed the smartphone OS provides a very fine granularity for the motion sensor. But for this attack, it's really hard for us to defend. The key reason is we were trying to even though we have permission to protect the motion sensor, we can use the motion sensor permission to attack other permission, to get the grant from other permission. So it's pretty hard for us to prevent it from the smartphone OS for this attack.
Yeah, but I mean, so I guess at least don't make it a zero the permission thing, and then I guess at least people know that you have access to this, right?
Yes, I think they are trying to do that. At least they are show that, for example, this app is running in the background, although they don't have permission for the motion sensor, but they will show in Android 10, I think they will show this app is running in the background, which means people will see there is an app running in the background, which may trying to kindly monitor this attack, I guess.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.